Welcome to Strides to Solutions. I'm your host, Esther Adams, and today we're exploring one of the most evidence based yet misunderstood approaches to managing chronic fatigue. Whether you're coping with myalgic encephalomyelitis, fibromyalgia, long COVID, or any condition where fatigue significantly impacts your functioning, understanding pacing could fundamentally transform how you navigate your daily life. Let me begin with something that might surprise you. When researchers analyzed over 1,000 studies on chronic fatigue management, they found that pacing consistently emerges as the intervention patients prefer most and report the greatest benefit from. Yet it remains one of the least standardized and most poorly understood approaches in clinical settings. Today, I want to provide you with a comprehensive understanding of what pacing actually entails and how to implement it effectively. First, let's establish what pacing truly represents, because most people fundamentally misunderstand this concept from the outset. Pacing isn't about reducing activity levels or accepting defeat. It's not about becoming sedentary or abandoning your goals. Pacing is sophisticated energy resource management. It's about understanding your energy as a finite, fluctuating commodity and learning to allocate it strategically rather than haphazardly depleting it and hoping for recovery. Consider how you manage your financial resources. When you have a limited budget, you don't make random purchases hoping your account balance will somehow increase. You prioritize essential expenses, plan for predictable costs, keep reserves for emergencies, and make strategic decisions about discretionary spending. Pacing applies this same systematic approach to your energy resources. The scientific foundation for pacing is increasingly robust. Research demonstrates that pacing interventions can reduce fatigue with what we call a moderate effect size, approximately negative zero point 0.5 in statistical terms. To translate this into practical language, this represents the difference between feeling exhausted and barely functional most days versus feeling tired but capable of sustained activity most days. Studies also show significant reductions in psychological distress and depressive symptoms, which makes perfect neurobiological sense when you understand the relationship between energy management and nervous system regulation. When you consistently exceed your energy capacity and experience subsequent crashes, you're essentially conditioning your nervous system to anticipate failure and unpredictability. Each cycle of overexertion followed by collapse reinforces neural pathways associated with anxiety, frustration, and learned helplessness. Effective pacing interrupts this maladaptive cycle by helping you operate within what researchers term your energy envelope. The energy envelope concept requires thorough understanding for successful implementation. Visualize your daily energy existing within a flexible boundary that expands and contracts based on multiple variables. Some days, this boundary might accommodate more activity, other days, significantly less, but it always exists. When you consistently operate within this envelope, you preserve energy reserves and avoid the delayed exhaustion characteristic of post exertional malaise. When you repeatedly exceed this boundary, you create cumulative energy debt that manifests as prolonged, severe fatigue lasting days or weeks. This envelope fluctuates based on sleep architecture, stress hormone levels, immune system activation, weather patterns, hormonal cycles, medication effects, and dozens of other physiological variables. Learning to accurately assess your daily energy envelope becomes a sophisticated interoceptive skill requiring systematic development over time. Research identifies two primary pacing approaches, and understanding both provides you with a comprehensive toolkit. Energy conservation pacing focuses on operating within your perceived energy limits by recognizing early fatigue signals and terminating activities before reaching exhaustion. The second approach, operant learning pacing, involves establishing consistent activity quotas, regardless of subjective energy levels, and systematically increasing these quotas over time. Both methodologies have clinical merit, but successful implementation typically requires mastering energy conservation principles before attempting structured activity progression. You cannot sustainably increase activity levels without first developing accurate awareness of your baseline energy boundaries and the skill to respect them consistently. Let me address something that frequently confuses people about pacing research outcomes. Some studies demonstrate modest or inconsistent results for pacing interventions, and a minority report what researchers cautiously describe as detrimental effects. This doesn't indicate that pacing is harmful. Rather, it reflects the inherent challenge of evaluating highly individualized interventions within standardized research parameters. The most effective pacing strategies are necessarily personalized and adaptive, which makes them inherently difficult to assess through controlled methodologies. The PACE trial, involving over 600 participants, found that standardized adaptive pacing therapy wasn't superior to cognitive behavioral therapy or graded exercise therapy. However, the pacing protocol used in that study was rigid and prescriptive, unlike how pacing naturally evolves in clinical practice, or how patients intuitively develop personalized pacing strategies. Authentic pacing resembles learning to respond fluidly to energy fluctuations rather than following inflexible protocols. It requires developing what I conceptualize as energy literacy, the capacity to accurately interpret internal physiological signals and respond appropriately. This involves sophisticated integration of interoception, executive function, and emotional regulation systems. Interoception represents your ability to perceive internal bodily signals, including heart rate variability, muscle tension, cognitive clarity, and energy availability. Many individuals coping with chronic fatigue have compromised interoception, either from illness related neurological changes or from years of override behaviors that taught them to ignore bodily feedback. Effective pacing often begins with systematically rebuilding this internal awareness. Here's how you actually develop improved interoception. Set hourly alarms throughout your day for 1 week. When the alarm sounds, immediately pause whatever you're doing and conduct a brief internal assessment. Ask yourself, what's my current energy level on a scale of 1 to 10? What does my body feel like right now? Tense, relaxed, heavy, light? What's my cognitive clarity like? Sharp, foggy, scattered? How's my mood? Stable, irritable, anxious, content? Write these observations down without judgment. You're not trying to change anything yet. You're simply gathering data about your internal landscape. After 1 week, review your notes. You'll likely notice patterns you weren't previously aware of. Maybe your energy consistently drops at 2 p.m. Perhaps your cognitive clarity is best in the morning but deteriorates after lunch. Maybe stress conversations immediately impact your physical energy levels. This awareness provides the foundation for all effective pacing strategies. You cannot manage what you cannot accurately perceive. The executive function component involves complex planning, decision making, and cognitive flexibility skills. You're constantly calculating energy expenditure, assessing priorities, and managing risk. Should I complete this task now when my energy feels adequate, or conserve this energy for something more essential later? Can I handle this social commitment given my current energy trajectory and tomorrow's obligations? How do I modify this necessary activity to reduce its energy cost? Let me give you a concrete example of what energy window protection and optimization actually looks like in practice. Sarah has ME/CFS, and through careful tracking discovered that her optimal energy window occurs between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. most days. During this time, her cognitive function is clearest, her physical energy is most stable, and her mood is most resilient. To protect this window, Sarah implements several specific strategies. She turns her phone to airplane mode from 8:45 a.m. to 11:15 a.m., eliminating the cognitive drain of notifications and decision-making about whether to respond to messages. She prepares everything she needs for her priority tasks the evening before. Her workspace is organized, materials are readily accessible, and she's eliminated any setup time that would consume precious high energy minutes. Sarah schedules her most cognitively demanding work during this window, tasks requiring sustained attention, complex problem solving, or creative thinking. She doesn't waste this premium energy on routine activities like checking email or paying bills, which she can accomplish adequately during lower energy periods. To optimize this window, Sarah has developed specific preparation rituals. She ensures she's properly hydrated before 9 a.m., but avoids drinking excessive fluids that might require bathroom breaks during her peak time. She eats a stable breakfast that won't cause blood sugar fluctuations. She does 5 minutes of gentle movement to activate her circulation without depleting energy reserves. Most importantly, Sarah has communicated with household members about this protected time. Her partner knows not to initiate conversations about household logistics during this window. Her children understand that unless there's an emergency, they need to wait until after 11 a.m. to ask for help with non urgent matters. This level of specificity is what distinguishes effective pacing from vague energy management advice. Every element is intentionally designed to maximize the utility of limited energy resources. Task segmentation requires similarly precise implementation. Let's examine grocery shopping as a comprehensive example. Traditional approaches view grocery shopping as a single activity, but effective pacing recognizes it involves multiple distinct energy domains. Cognitive energy is required for meal planning, creating shopping lists, making decisions about products and prices, and navigating store layouts. Physical energy is needed for walking, lifting, carrying, and standing. Sensory energy processes crowds, noise, fluorescent lighting, and overwhelming product displays. Emotional energy manages any anxiety about leaving home, interacting with strangers, or handling unexpected situations like long lines or item unavailability. An effective pacer might separate these components across different times and energy levels. When cognitive energy is optimal, they plan meals for the week and create detailed shopping lists organized by store layout to minimize decision making while shopping. They might research prices online and plan their route to maximize efficiency. When physical energy is good but cognitive energy is limited, they might choose stores with familiar layouts to reduce mental processing demands. They'll shop during off peak hours to minimize sensory overload and social interaction requirements. They might use grocery pickup services when energy levels are particularly low, or break shopping into multiple small trips rather than attempting comprehensive weekly shopping. For the physical component, they might use a cart even for small purchases to reduce carrying demands. They'll wear comfortable, supportive shoes and dress in layers to manage temperature fluctuations that could affect energy levels. They might choose stores with better lighting and wider aisles to reduce visual and spatial processing demands. The emotional component might involve bringing headphones to reduce auditory overwhelm, shopping with a supportive friend when social energy allows, or choosing familiar stores where they feel more confident navigating unexpected situations. This level of detailed analysis might seem excessive, but for someone coping with severe chronic fatigue, these modifications can mean the difference between successfully completing necessary tasks and experiencing days of recovery from overexertion. Understanding different types of fatigue is crucial for targeted pacing strategies. Physical fatigue affects muscular and cardiovascular systems, manifesting as weakness, reduced endurance, or feeling physically heavy. Cognitive fatigue impairs concentration, memory, decision making, and information processing. Emotional fatigue depletes your capacity for mood regulation, stress tolerance, and interpersonal interaction. Sensory fatigue results from overstimulation of visual, auditory, tactile, or olfactory systems. These fatigue types can occur independently or in complex combinations. You might have adequate physical energy but severe cognitive fog, making physical tasks manageable while mental work feels impossible. Conversely, you might be mentally clear but physically exhausted, making seated cognitive work preferable to any physical activity. Sophisticated pacing involves assessing these domains separately and planning activities accordingly. When cognitive energy is low, but physical energy is available, you might choose activities like gentle exercise, organizing physical spaces, doing hands on creative work, or completing routine physical tasks that don't require complex decision making. When cognitive energy is optimal but physical energy is limited, you might tackle mental tasks like planning, research, writing, or problem solving while remaining seated or lying down. When both cognitive and physical energy are low, but emotional energy feels stable, you might choose socially restorative activities like gentle conversation with supportive friends or engaging with comforting media content. Timing becomes critically important when you understand your personal energy rhythms. Many people coping with chronic fatigue have identifiable patterns, perhaps peak energy in the morning with afternoon crashes, better energy on specific days of the week, or seasonal variations in overall capacity. Through systematic tracking, you might discover that your cognitive function is optimal between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m., adequate from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., and significantly impaired after 2 p.m. Your physical energy might peak between 10 a.m. and noon, remain moderate until 4 p.m., then drop substantially. Understanding these patterns allows you to schedule high priority activities during optimal times and reserve lower demand tasks for naturally lower energy periods. But tracking alone isn't sufficient. You need specific strategies for working with these rhythms. If your energy crashes predictably at 2 p.m., you might schedule a 20-minute rest break at 1:45 p.m. before the crash occurs, potentially preventing or minimizing its severity. If your cognitive function deteriorates after lunch, you might shift all decision-making tasks to morning hours and reserve afternoon time for routine activities requiring minimal mental processing. The consistency over intensity principle requires comprehensive understanding for effective implementation. Traditional approaches often emphasize maximizing output during high energy periods, but for individuals coping with chronic fatigue, sustainable consistency typically produces better long term outcomes than sporadic high intensity efforts. This means choosing to do 20 minutes of gentle activity daily rather than attempting 2-hour exercise sessions that require days of recovery. It means completing one small household task each day rather than attempting marathon cleaning sessions followed by exhaustion. It means maintaining regular social contact through brief, low energy interactions rather than occasional intensive socializing that depletes your reserves for weeks. Implementing consistency requires developing what I call minimum viable activities, the smallest possible versions of important tasks that you can sustain even on low energy days. For physical movement, this might mean 5 minutes of gentle stretching on difficult days rather than skipping movement entirely. For social connection, it might mean sending a brief text message rather than avoiding contact altogether when you can't manage longer conversations. Rest quality requires as much attention as activity management. Many people mistakenly believe that any sedentary activity constitutes rest, but true restoration requires engaging your parasympathetic nervous system, the physiological state that enables actual energy renewal. Watching television might feel restful, but if you're processing complex storylines, experiencing emotional activation from content, or making frequent decisions about what to watch, your nervous system remains in an activated state. Social media scrolling might seem like downtime, but the constant micro decisions, emotional reactivity to posts, and information processing can be surprisingly depleting. Genuine restorative rest engages your parasympathetic nervous system through specific types of activities. These might include progressive muscle relaxation, where you systematically tense and release muscle groups to promote physical relaxation. Deep breathing exercises that emphasize longer exhales than inhales activate parasympathetic responses. Gentle, repetitive activities like knitting, coloring, or playing simple musical instruments can induce meditative states that genuinely restore energy. Spending time in natural environments when possible provides multisensory restoration. Even viewing nature images or listening to nature sounds can activate relaxation responses. Warm baths, Gentle self massage or applying heat to tense muscles can promote physical relaxation that supports energy restoration. The key is distinguishing between activities that occupy your time and activities that actually restore your nervous system. True restoration leaves you feeling more energized rather than equally or more fatigued. Social and emotional aspects of pacing present unique challenges that require specific strategies. Effective pacing often necessitates setting boundaries, declining invitations, requesting accommodations, and having potentially difficult conversations about your limitations. Here's how to implement social pacing concretely. When someone invites you to an event, instead of immediately saying yes or no, you might respond, "That sounds lovely. Let me check my energy levels that day and get back to you by Thursday." This gives you time to assess whether you'll have adequate energy without having to explain your condition in detail. For events you want to attend, you might negotiate modifications, arriving later to avoid setup time, leaving early to prevent exhaustion, bringing your own transportation so you're not dependent on others' timelines, or asking if you can contribute in a way that doesn't require sustained energy, like bringing a simple purchased item rather than homemade food. At work, pacing accommodations might include scheduling important meetings during your peak energy times, requesting written follow ups for verbal instructions to reduce cognitive load, taking breaks every hour to prevent energy depletion, or arranging your workspace to minimize sensory overwhelm. Family pacing requires clear communication and boundary establishment. You might establish specific times when you're available for household discussions and other times when you need to preserve energy for essential tasks. You might delegate certain responsibilities to other family members or modify how household tasks are completed to reduce energy demands. The guilt and shame often accompanying chronic fatigue can significantly impair pacing effectiveness. You might feel selfish when prioritizing energy conservation, lazy when resting despite genuine need, or inadequate when setting necessary limitations. Addressing these psychological barriers often requires reframing how you conceptualize energy management. Effective pacing isn't selfishness. It's strategic resource management that enables you to be more consistently present and reliable in your relationships. When you manage your energy skillfully, you're less likely to overcommit and cancel, less likely to be irritable during interactions, and more able to offer genuine presence rather than depleted going through the motions participation. Technology can support pacing implementation, but should enhance rather than replace internal awareness development. Heart rate monitors can provide objective feedback about exertion levels, particularly valuable since many individuals with chronic fatigue have altered perception of physical effort. When your subjective sense of exertion doesn't match physiological reality, objective monitoring can help calibrate your internal awareness. Activity trackers can help identify patterns in energy and symptoms over time. You might discover that your energy consistently drops after certain activities, improves with specific types of rest, or follows patterns related to sleep quality, weather changes, or stress levels. Smartphone applications can support activity planning and energy tracking. You might use calendar apps to color code activities by energy requirement, helping you visualize energy distribution across your week. Reminder apps can prompt you to take breaks or check in with your energy levels throughout the day. The key is using technology to develop more accurate body awareness rather than creating dependence on external validation. Your goal is becoming increasingly skilled at interpreting internal signals and making decisions based on that information. Flexibility within structure represents a crucial pacing principle that requires careful balance. You need sufficient structure to make energy management intentional and systematic, while maintaining enough adaptability to respond to fluctuating capacity. This involves developing contingency plans for different energy scenarios. If you plan to complete certain tasks but wake up with unexpectedly low energy, what are your backup options? Maybe you'll modify the task to require less energy, postpone it to a higher energy day, or substitute a different activity that better matches your current capacity. Having these alternative plans reduces the stress and decision making burden when energy levels don't match expectations and prevents the all or nothing thinking that can derail pacing efforts. Remember that effective pacing is ultimately about developing a sustainable, compassionate relationship with your energy resources. It's about becoming a skilled manager of your internal capacity rather than fighting against your limitations. This represents a fundamental shift from reactive crisis management to proactive resource optimization. The goal isn't eliminating fatigue entirely or returning to previous energy levels, though some improvement may occur over time. The objective is working more skillfully with whatever energy you have, reducing the severity and frequency of crashes, and developing confidence in your ability to manage your condition effectively. These outcomes might seem modest, but for individuals coping with chronic fatigue, they can represent profound improvements in daily functioning and quality of life. Learning to pace effectively is learning to live skillfully within your current reality while remaining open to gradual improvements, one of the most valuable life management skills anyone can develop. This is Esther Adams with Strides to Solutions. Thank you for joining me today.